bills that were introduced in the legislature in reference to uh, amending the Constitution, well, the Maryland Constitution to keep from having contested elections in circuit courts.
Oh, I've been
So,
kind of.
so
Yeah,
if
I've been
you,
told I can't do that.
yeah, that's what I figured. So if you want,
Yeah.
we could also put you down as guest and you could listen and you could be off screen.
Okay. But I gotta change my picture too. Let me see.
Yeah. So you want me to rename you as guest?
Um,
Yeah, you need to
yeah.
change your picture too.
Where'd I go?
uh,
Am I there?
yes, you are.
Yeah,
Your
but your
picture is
picture-
up. So you have to take yourself off video or change your.
I think I'm gonna just get back on. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, we're ready to start.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else want to change? Everybody's comfortable? Okay.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Like,
All right. Thank you for coming on. You be the judge. This is Dr. Paul, and then the other co-host is Marylin Pierre, attorney at law. We've already been talking off air, but thank you for everyone for joining on the Apple Podcast, iHeart, iTunes, and everywhere where you get your podcast channels, and also YouTube Live. If you have any questions, you can please put it in all of your Twitter, Periscope, Facebook, or Instagram, and you can have any questions. But we want to get into talking about this bill. So Marylin, kick us off real.
well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're sorry about the technical difficulties. We're hoping from now on things will be smooth sailing. And we are having people joining us as the meeting is going along, so that's absolutely terrific. This is the third part of a series that we're having in reference to the bills that have been introduced in the Maryland legislature to amend the Maryland Constitution to keep from having contested judicial races in the circuit court. In the first part, we gave a broad overview of those bills. The second part, we discussed the harm that those bills have caused and will cause if they are passed. And this is the part where we actually talk about action plans. And I'm really glad that we have, Judge Barber with us on here. She's a wonderful advocate for this position. We also have attorney Ricky Jones with us, and he is also very, very good at advocating for the positions that they have. And so thank you for your guests who have been hanging in there with us and who have followed the series. Okay, so if we could start with Judge Barber, you are so familiar with this. If you could give us an overview and what action plans we should be talking about today.
Well, greetings, everyone. I'm glad that you invited me back again for a second time. It was a great discussion last week, and we hope to continue and kind of focus on action items. There are currently 3 bills that are in the state legislature: Senate Bill 295 and House Bill 447. And I believe the other one is House Bill 35. It was actually in your email, Marylin Pierre. And each of these bills focus on the same issue: eliminating contested judicial elections. So the focus is really to acknowledge and bring to the forefront the fact that this is a voter suppression tactic. It would totally remove the power of the voter to go to the polls and choose who they want to be as their circuit court trial judge. And these trial judges have a great deal of power in the sense that they have jurisdiction over a large diversity of cases. If you had a landlord-tenant case that was appealed, it would be in the circuit court. If it was a felony trial, if it was a police misconduct trial, likely going to be in the circuit court. If you have to appeal a workers' compensation action, likely it would be in the circuit court. If you have a domestic matter, child support, child custody, marital distribution of property, all of these types of cases, corporate, minority stakeholder suits, shareholder suits, and all corporate matters, even church matters that, for example, if there was a property dispute over churches and deciding on how property is divided for a specific church, a lot of those issues, injunctions or temporary restraining orders, as they are sometimes called, all of those areas are under the jurisdiction of the trial court. And who is in that chair is so important. Number one,
because because the discussion is, the reason why we want to amend the Constitution is because there are unqualified people who are running for this office, and we want to make sure that only qualified people get into these offices.
Well, let me focus on that point right there, because that brings up issues over who's qualified and unqualified. The qualifications are in the state constitution, period. That's how you actually get on the ballot. Is the fact that the Constitution is written in a very broad way, where it allows people, if you are a certain age, more than 35, practice law for 5 years, member of the state Maryland bar, resident of the state of Maryland, and there's a broad provision in the Constitution about integrity and of good standing. Then those are the qualifications that would qualify you. But the focus of the issue that we want to make sure that the public is enlightened about is the fact that when you have judicial nominating commissions, they are not, in their very not transparent way, the best options in choosing judges, because a whole lot of crooked stuff can go on in that arena.
We did talk a lot about that last week, which is why we're just hitting that point and moving on to action items. And I don't know if Attorney Jones want to put in a couple of words on this matter so far, because we're talking about action items, what's going to happen next week, and what we can do to prepare for what's going to happen next week.
Yes, thank you very much for recognizing me. The only thing I would share is that I don't want it to be missed that this whole idea of eliminating contested elections for the circuit court is extremely significant, because the circuit court, it basically has a hand in the lives of everybody in a significant way. Major criminal matters, major civil matters, juvenile, family law, custody, child visitation, appeals from the district court, from administrative agencies, from the orphans court. All of this goes through the circuit court. And you can be pretty certain that once they make a decision, it's very difficult to get it reversed, and it's unlikely you're going to get a writ of certiorari granted. So it is the court that has so much influence over people's lives to eliminate them from having a say-so by way of election is really taxation without representation in a way. In other words, you want to just make decisions, not regard the people, impose things that alter their lives significantly, and the people can't say anything. It is absolutely absurd. It's anti-democratic, it's anti-American. And the only thing I could think of right now for anybody to push this, and I've been down there about 4 times speaking in Annapolis with the chief of the Court of Appeals there pushing that. And as I said then, I'll say now, this is unwise. It is anti-democratic, and it seeks to codify the racial discrimination that is systemic in the judiciary in Maryland and other states as well. So it's really a terrible idea. And the first thing we have to do is speak out against it, and then communicate with our legislators to get them to come up with a bill to pass into law, which prohibits the Judicial Nominating Commission from recommending to the governor all of these Caucasians who are objectively less qualified than non-Caucasians, in particular African Americans, and ignore our percentage in the county. We should be recommending them at the same percentage that we are represented in the county.
Thank you, Attorney Jones, and Judge Barber. If you could take it from there, what steps can we take if we don't agree with this law? If we think that it is voter suppression, it's discriminatory, it is not something that's good for our community, it's not good for the people who are going to come in front of these circuit court judges, what can we do in order to fight these bills?
Well, the most important focus has to be on everybody that, number one, serves on the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, and every senator that, including the chair and the vice chair, the chair is Bill Smith, and the vice chair, continue to let them know that Senate Bill 295 is voter suppression. It's a bad idea. It's anti-democratic, and it should not have a favorable report coming out of the committee. The same thing on the House side. House Delegate Kathleen Dunai.
I'm sorry. Let me just stop you for just 1 second. I'm looking at the members of the Maryland Senate Judiciary Proceedings Committee, and William Smith from District 20. He's the chair. Jeff Wallstreicher, I forgot what district he's from. He is the vice chair. Then we have John D. or Jack Bailey, Jill P. Carter, Robert Castley, Shelley Heddleman, Michael J. Hawk. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Hough. Susan C. Lee, Michael A. Jackson, Charles E. Sidnor III, Christopher R. West. So anybody who has one of these people as their representatives could then write to these representatives and say, I am one of your constituents. And even if they're not one of your representatives, you could say, I am a voter in the state of Maryland, and this is the reason why I don't think this is a good idea. And I'm sorry to have interrupted you, Judge Barber. Sorry,
Molly,
you wanted to say
Molly had her
something?
hand up.
No, we'll get to you, Molly. Real quick, is there a possibility? Is there a lawsuit we can put to this if it does pass? Is there a way we can bring charges on this judgment?
Great question. And it hasn't been done yet. And because it hasn't been done, it's really not right to be thinking in that direction is good, but it would require a lot of work, a lot of effort. We would need almost an army of people to support this initiative. And the scary part, well, first of all, these bills are written because you're dealing with a constitutional amendment. This would actually, it's layered, it has steps. After it comes out of committee, that bill has to match a House bill. If it doesn't, they go to conference committee. And once it goes to the floor, then it has to go to a floor. Even if they voted in favor of this, that's not the end of it. It doesn't become specifically law. All this does is allow it to be placed on a referendum for voters to vote for. So voters would have to vote yes or no, whether or not they want to agree to the elimination of contested judicial elections.
And I will just say that if it does become law, of course, we can challenge that on the basis of the violation of the 14th Amendment, a violation of the equal protection of the law. So definitely we can file a lawsuit against the state of Maryland for something like this.
Okay, but here's the thing. Here's the bad part. We can't let it get that far for a lot of reasons. Just like you see all of the pushback that is going on now with the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. They're trying to repeal that. And it would take the same effort. After that becomes the law, you have to turn around and try to repeal that to go back to contested elections. And to the extent that is possible, that's almost an insurmountable task in and of itself. You have to undo what they've done.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
this is
I
different. I
think
wanted
I
to say one
interrupted
thing.
you and, oh, I'm so sorry. I think I interrupted you, Judge Barber, and stopped your flow because you were talking about Delegate Dume. But before you get back to that, I wanted to point out that the members of the House of Delegates Judiciary Committee who are going to hear this bill on February 24th is Luke Lippinger, who's the chair, Vanessa Atterbury is the vice chair, Curtis Anderson, Lauren Erican, J. Sandy Bartlett, John S. Carden, Frank M. Conaway, Daniel L. Cox, Charlotte Crutchfield, Deborah M. Davis, Wanaka B. Fisher, Robin L. Grammer Jr., Michael Griffith, Leslie J. Lopez, Michael E. Malone, Susan K. McComas, David Moon, Emily K. Shetty, Brenda J. Thiam, Ronald L. Watson, and Nicole A. Williams are the members of that committee, in case anybody wanted to know the names that in case anybody recognizes the names as one of their representatives, they could address that person personally and tell them that. And if not, they could also say, hey, I don't like this bill and these are my reasons. Okay, Judge Barber?
Yeah, Delegate Kathleen Dumais is on the House side, but she also, and I believe she's from Montgomery County.
She is, District 15.
Okay, and so then there's Delegate John Carden, who also has another bill, the second bill. Now, all of us is going to be heard together. There are new rules in place when you testify before the state legislature and the committees. You have to go to the Maryland General Assembly website, and when you go to the main page, you will see in the upper right-hand corner a little box that says My MGA, and that stands for My Maryland General Assembly portal account. You have to create an account, and you have to identify the legislation that you're going to testify in favor of or against. And you have to identify whether you want to do an oral statement or oral and written. And if you are going to do a written statement, you can upload it at that time. And you can only do it during a specific window, 2 business days before the hearing starts. So that means between 8:30 a.m. and 3 p.m. on Monday, the 22nd. That's the time period where you have to sign up to testify, and you have to let them know whether your testimony is going to be oral or written. And then you would be able to be eligible to speak on that day and be available by Zoom. They will send you the link, and only people who have been chosen to speak will be sent the link so that they can testify at that time.
Okay, I just want to make sure I give the website again. The website is mgaleg.maryland.gov. And then, okay, and I put it in the chat for the people who are interested. And
We have wonderful people that want to join in the discussion.
Yes, exactly. We look forward to all the discussions. Okay, I see 2 hands up, but someone said that Molly's hand was up first. Dr. Hawk, do you have a question?
No, I don't have anything important to say. Jeff Waldstreicher is my senator, and I have not spoken to him about this, but he's generally very progressive.
Oh.
And Yvette Butler spoke to him about something similar a couple of years ago. I don't know what the discussion was, but she had a favorable impression of him. And Emily Shetty is my delegate.
Yes, and thank you for saying that, because I think that they would both love to hear your position on this matter, because sometimes when you have on the last bill, Judge Barber, there were how many people testifying on the other side, and you were the only one testifying on this side?
For the Senate Bill 295, there may have been about 4 or 5 persons that testified. In prior years, it's been more than that. And they had many co-sponsors. Now the co-sponsors started to drop off, but for example, they may have had about 5 or 6 or 10 witnesses at one time. But they all come in a group and they're given like an extraordinary amount of time to make their case. And then, the citizens, they're given either 2 minutes in the Senate or 90 seconds or 1 minute in the House to make your point.
Right. All right. Thank you. I saw Miss Ward's
Yes.
hand up first. So Miss Ward, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Okay, I wanted to thank you, for conducting, this meeting and everything. But what I wanted to
Thank you for being here.
share with you all is there's other groups out there that can join in with you all, that can support, like Progressive Maryland. Progressive Maryland did endorse, candidates that ran, in the last race against the appointed judges. Myself personally, I never voted for judges until 2016 because I never had a choice. They always had people on the ballot, and I think that education is the key. We may need to look at getting some media involved with this, because often years ago it was 4 names, and then when Ingrid Turner ran, it was 5 names, and this go round it was 5 names plus 2 other names. But I think people want a choice in a matter. I think that it's not just here, like in Montgomery County, Prince George's, but it's statewide that really we've been lied to. And it's been allowed for us to be lied to because nobody has stood up to the system, until it's time. But the only way that you're going to get it and to allow people to know that it's wrong, if they look at those House Bill 409, the Juvenile Restoration Act, you can see how having appointed judges that will feed our jail system with juveniles. I met a lot of them personally, here recently, because some of them are getting released, but the numbers is over 400 and 85% of them are Black people that have went in as juveniles, and then they either served 30 to 40 years without any appeal or hearing. But that's unheard of. So I think that just showing how our system is unjust and unfair. And even when they talk about, hey, are you appointed or you're not an appointed candidate, if a person actually looked at the appointed candidates, they shouldn't even have been appointed. So I think exposing that and maybe having some citizens that's not attorneys or whatever to have a stake in the matter, because we should have a voice. Even you as an attorney, even when they ran for office, I thought it was unfair for you all to have to give money to their campaign in the first place. It's like, hey, I have to give money to their campaign because I have to show up in their courtroom and I don't want them mad at me. I think that should be a flag on the play, that if they're going to run, they should not be able to ask anybody that have to go face them for any money. I think that that's wrong. But if people was aware that they would look at it and say, hey, it's wrong too. But because it's a quiet and contained issue, and people have often listened to people like, such and such is not appointed. She wasn't appointed. But then if you look at such and such record, that person could have had more experience than all 5 of the people that she was running against. So to me, we want the best in the courtroom. We want somebody who's actually practicing the courtroom. You shouldn't just be able to be like a real estate attorney and then you want to go in there and talk about family matters. To me, it doesn't line up. So if we're going to deal with this, I think that on the flip side, we need to have requirements. If you want to have your appointed candidates, at least let them have some experience. It can't be because you're part of a social club or because I have a cute smile, I'm going to get in. Or because I was the president, you're appointed. We want effective leadership. We want people that would be fair. And a lot of times with the people that are appointed, they're not fair. They already there working for a system. They're not there for the people. And since it is a taxpaying position, I think the people should have a voice in it. And if people was aware that, hey, that they're trying to take this away, that they just going to dictate and tell us who's going to be in our court system to determine whether or not if the father had the opportunity to be with his child. When we know that in a Black community, the father need to also have the opportunity to be with their child, but they don't care about those things. So I think that you need to get some more community. Progressive Maryland will join in with you. I think you just need to reach out.
I'm kind of surprised that they have not started earlier because they have a white paper out that they're working on, and they have some talking points, they have some suggestions, but I have not heard them actually say that they are in opposition to the bill. I agree with you because they did support.
Larry Stafford, definitely, they'd be on it. I think that just reach out and have a conversation because we definitely we can be making the phone calls, to all of the different people and even calling their constituent. I think letting the people, all the people that you mentioned on the judiciary or the, on those committees, calling up their constituents and say, "Hey, are you aware that they're trying to take your right debate to pick your judge?"
Yes, that's true.
I think it's just really just simple as that. So what do you mean? Oh, they just want to give you somebody. A red flag will come up.
That's true.
So get the community involved. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ward. The next hand that I saw was Mitham. Mitham, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Ms. Marylin, for hosting this, co-hosting
You're
with
welcome.
Dr.
Thank
Paul.
you for joining us.
No,
I'm co-hosting. Dr. Dyer is
no,
also.
Dr. Dyer is the one hosting it. We
I'm
appreciate
just
that.
doing
We
a
need
lot of
more
talking
people.
today.
Yeah, we need more people, leadership like what you are doing for the community. Thank you very much, first of all, okay? Number one. Number two is, as I have stated to you personally, and I have stated in the last meeting, I have evidences against the sitting judges for possible corruption, which I have filed 3 lawsuits in the federal court, which has been dismissed because of judicial.
Okay, well, but
No, why I'm
we
saying,
would love to go into that, but
no,
we
I'm not going
really
into
want
that.
to
What
talk
I'm
about
saying,
action plans today.
right. I'm not going into that. All I'm saying is that when is this bill is being heard, I just wanted to give you the evidences. If you want to talk about as an attorney, why this bill should not be passed, because there has been corruption going on right now, expertise communication, money going through from defense attorney to the judges to rule a favorable case. That's my opinion. So I'm just giving you the evidences because based on this evidence, this is facts. This is in the court system.
Yes, I understand, but what we were speaking about Progressive Maryland. Well, hold on just one second. We were speaking about Progressive Maryland. That's one of their talking points, because they said that there should not be attorneys who give money to these judges when they're running for election, who then appear in front of these judges. That's one of their talking points. So yes, because some of us recognize there is corruption in the process, and so we're working towards getting the corruption out.
And there is the expertise communication. There is expertise communication also. I'm just giving this to you.
Yes, exactly.
So that
all of that. It's all of that. So thank you very much for your question. I don't know if Attorney Jones want to address some of the talking points that we have, or some of the other issues that would bring us towards what actions we need to take.
Well, I'm going to ask Ricky Jones, and thank you for everyone for coming on here to You Be the Judge, and we are here every Wednesday. But Ricky, let me ask you this question, and it is a direct question. We need more people involved. We need people to write. We need people to write their representatives. We need people to sign up so they can do an oral comment. Is there a stronger way for us that you see that we as people can put a stop to this? Is the question.
Thank you, Dr. Dyer. One of the things I want to make clear, because people may not know this, is the legal route has already been traveled by Reverend Jones alone, all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And so the next thing that happens after the United States Supreme Court will not hear this, it must be dealt with legislatively. Therefore, we have to not only communicate with our representatives, but flood communication to help them understand the importance of making it a law to prevent this type of racial exclusion that's systemic in the judiciary. So not only do we have to come together, not only do we have to communicate, but we have to be as one in our communication and make our representatives understand the status quo cannot continue. And so that's the first thing. As a member of the NAACP, we have been out in front of the Circuit Court for Anne Arundel County protesting. I'm talking about literally walking with signs. Every avenue that's available, we must exhaust, because as long as we don't take major action, you'll continue to get silence from the judiciary. You see, those who are the beneficiaries of systemic racism will always be, and if we stay silent, nothing ever changes. So we must exhaust all avenues legislatively. We must exhaust avenues in terms of communication. We must exhaust avenues in terms of protesting, the whole 9 yards, because this is racism. And I will leave you with this. As Reverend Emmett Burns, a former delegate, said to me, a pastor friend of mine, he said, I'm from Mississippi. I know racism. He said, and racism is like a block of ice. It's not going anywhere unless you put some fire under it. Thank you, sir.
Judge Barber, when we talk about getting into the legislative action, and we know there's a process, and we know we can show up, we know we can testify, who picks this committee to hear this is the one, or is they already on the committee, and how were they picked?
Well, the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, usually those assignments come from the Senate President. Okay. So most of the people that are sitting on the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee were appointed by the president, the president of the Senate, formerly Mike Miller. Now it is Ferguson. So the same on the House side. The House Speaker is responsible for committee assignments. And so the people that serve on that House Judiciary Committee, they are appointed by committee assignments that are usually given to them by the House Speaker. So the composition of those committees usually is consistent. Now, there has been some movement in the House Judiciary Committee because Delegate Dumais used to be either the vice chair of the House Judiciary Committee, and I think Valpreso was the chair at one time, and now Luke Clippinger is the chair. So you know, these changes of the guard and whatnot are significant if you know which way they're going to vote. And it's a matter of, again, the hardest part, you know, during the pandemic is to try to run into the Senate Judiciary Committee, or not Senate, but House Judiciary or Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee members, and connecting with them and having a conversation. It's just so, you know, there's just so much to unpack to get them to understand and know that this is a voter suppression issue. And, you know, but beyond that, you know, they're aware of the fact that that in the past, many African-American leaders protested the Harry Hughes administration, who was appointing whites only to the bench. And so it was the contested judicial election matter that allowed them access. And so this is another access issue, that it's another access issue in terms of having fair representation on the courts. Because these people, let's go back, for example, to the issue of police misconduct. We saw just recently, Amy Cooper's charges were dropped. We had a nice prosecutor who decided to drop all those charges after she made that false phone call all over the internet. It just went all over the internet. And you had that type of those discretionary calls where she clearly avoided jail time. And what that case would have done is it would have likely have gone, if it was a jury trial, appeared before a trial court judge. And these people are the ones that also are responsible for the Trayvon Martin verdict. And they marshal evidence. They decide as the gatekeeper what evidence goes in, what jury trial instruction is right, what's not right, whether the jury trial instruction, you know, they can decide whether a jury should hear the word NIGGER if it was made. So all of these issues are relevant. And I see my colleague there, Attorney Doris Walker, who's applied for judicial vacancies too. I want to yield the floor to her. So I'm sure she has also input in this. But all of these issues are front and center and important, and we can't lose sight of it.
Okay, we have Dr. Hawk who wants to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I think that the public knows nothing about how judges are picked. And it would be good to have some articles in media, whether they be online or elsewhere, to explain the situation. Hamza Khan did a wonderful job in his paper of explaining the corruption. He would be a good person to write an article. Maryland Matters might do it. The ACLU might do it. The Patch, Bethesda Beat. I don't know about the Washington Post, but people don't know anything about it. They need to.
Well, you know, during the last judicial election, the Post came out with a pro article in favor of this legislation and the elimination of contest. They just bought into the establishment's argument that, you know, choosing judges should be all about the Judicial Nominating Commission. And many of them are not vetted, by the way, and many of them, you know, have a, you know, take advantage of the situation because they have the power. You know, there's no oversight of these commissions at all. If you have conflicts of interest, they'll let you sit on the committee with conflicts of interest. So there's no oversight, and that's a real issue.
Yes, and Ms. Greenwalker wanted to add something to that.
Well, for me, the issue becomes minority representation on the bench. And so the question becomes, what method ensures and increases minority participation on the bench? And that's the question. That's one of the reasons I've been ambivalent about what's best, because there have been people who have been successful in challenging judges, people of color, but then have also been people who have been appointed who have lost their seats in contested elections. And so you end up with losing some representation and then gaining some representation. So I don't know what the numbers are. I've come to feel like there needs to be I'm come to the conclusion that there should be elections, because I think there needs to be ways to have judges accountable, to have some way, but I don't know the numbers. I don't know the numbers, and I would like to know the numbers. Like how many people of color, how many judges have lost their seats in elections? Because some of these places out here, some of these counties, you're not going to, you don't have a high enough population potentially to retain seats in a contested election. And so, does it handicap potentially minority participation and minority representation in other areas if the elections are, if there are contested elections? But I've come to, and I've thought about this, and I don't know the numbers, and I really would like to know the numbers. I don't know if anybody actually has them, and I myself maybe just will go and figure out what they are, and maybe even share if nobody has them. But that to me is the issue. What's the best way to ensure minority representation on the bench? That's the issue to me.
Yeah, I think if anybody would have that, it would probably be the administrative office of the courts, but I don't know if they would reveal that information to us. And Attorney Jones, I see your hand up, and I'll call on you in a couple of seconds. I just wanted to go back to Dr. Hawk. You said that Hamza Khan had a very good article. Do you have a link to that article that maybe you could send to me? And you unmute, and then I will put it in the chat, or do you want to put it in the chat?
It's the paper you sent us when you invited us to this meeting.
Oh, the white paper. Oh, okay, thank you. Yes. Okay.
It's
Okay,
very
thank
well
you.
done. It exposes all the problems in the courts in Maryland. And
Yes.
he would be a very good person to write an article, or somebody else could write it using his ideas. But I think the first thing is to educate the public with some online media piece before this
Yeah.
bill is heard.
And I don't think that the Washington Post or Maryland Matters would be, the places to go, but there are some outlets out there that would be very good places for us to look at. And let me go to Attorney Jones, and after that, I will address something else. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Ms. Pierre. Thank you, Ms. Pierre. The lady who was just speaking was asking about, she doesn't know what the numbers are. The Freedom of Information Act, you can request it from Administrative Office of the Courts, which I requested years ago and took those statistics to the United States Supreme Court, in which the numbers of excluding non-Caucasians from the bench, at least in Anne Arundel County, was 99.97%. The numbers were so stark that legally, there was no way in the world that I would have lost that case if the United States Supreme Court had simply granted my writ. It wasn't about the statistics. It is not about the numbers. The exclusion cannot be denied. So for people who keep saying, I'm looking for numbers, I have the statistics. I have the numbers. And if you exclude Prince George's County and Baltimore City, those numbers are almost identical around the state. There has been a how can I put this to bring it home? The judiciary is the last bastion of bold Jim Crow practices in America in the 21st century. And until people get this, they really don't see what's going on. This is what you call systemic racial discrimination in the judiciary. And what is wicked about it is that this is the very place people go for equity and justice, and they run into inequity and injustice.
I can't echo enough what he just said, in the sense that if everybody on this Zoom call were Hispanic and there were no Hispanics on the bench, how do you think you're going to get justice? How do you think that you're going to be heard in a way that understands your culture and understands what your struggle is, and understands, what caused the incident that is before the court? And so, the other major problem that we have when you're dealing with racism and when you're dealing with practicing exclusion is the fact that the beneficiaries, just as Reverend Ricky Nelson Jones pointed out, the beneficiaries don't care. They don't want to change the system because it benefits them. And to that extent, there are no consequences when you practice exclusion. There aren't. That's the other issue. There are absolutely no consequences in having some type of system where the majority of the beneficiaries are the people that are part of the majority race. That's part of the systemic issues. And it's the same thing with there are no consequences for shortlisting all whites, and you have a community of Hispanics and Native Americans and African Americans, and you're going to sit there and allow that to happen. And it's not necessarily a Black or white thing, because they've had Black people on these commissions. And the last time Clayton Green was retired from the Maryland Court of Appeals, the Appellate Judicial Nominating Commission for that specific 5th Judicial Circuit shortlisted whites only. And it's abominable, but it happened. And to the extent that there were no consequences behind it, they're not. There's no law that is in place that would make them do a do-over.
Okay, let me say, exclusion is an issue that is not going to be debatable. Okay, it's not debated in terms of, for example, I've been complaining about the Anne Arundel County, not just the bench, but the magistrates, okay? Because the judges have the power to appoint the magistrates. And what does it say about judges that don't find anybody Black qualified in Anne Arundel County? That's been going on for years. So,
Yeah, in Montgomery County, we have
Exclusion
one.
is an issue as well, and those, but the issue of elections, that's the one that really I think does need to be fleshed out for sure.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, that's true too. Someone suggested, and if you want me to give you credit for the suggestion, I'll be happy to. It is not my suggestion, but I'm not sure the person wanted me to, call out there. And I know that's not grammatically correct, but there as a pronoun nowadays, name. And the suggestion was if anyone wants to work on a subcommittee to do what, to do some organizing, we could do some of the groundwork. Like for instance, does anybody want to work on a subcommittee that is going to contact the legislatures, a subcommittee that is going to contact groups that might be in favor of the position that we hold, a subcommittee to get other supporters to either testify or notify their legislatures that they're not in agreement. It's whatever subcommittee that we would want to. Does anybody want to do that?
Well, can I say, and I'm just getting home. I really want to get out these clothes. but I will volunteer to work on something with somebody to actually get some data, because I am interested in the data on, what has happened in the past with regards to minorities on the bench, and, how many people have actually been able to successfully run for the bench. And again, we probably are talking about Baltimore City and PG County mostly, but also who has lost their seats, what minorities have lost their seats as a result of the elections and so forth. So I will volunteer to work on that aspect of the information with anybody, or have his team.
I work with you, Doris, on that, and then I'll get your number from Marylin Pierre. This is Dr.
Okay.
Paul. So I'll get on that. The other question I have
and also, sorry, one more thing, Dr. Dyer, because I'm thinking that Mr. Jones would probably be a good person to have in that committee since he's already done so much work
right, he's done
down that road. So, okay. Sorry, Dr. Dyer.
No, go ahead. So the question I have is, some of you attorneys and judges, the people who have been on this call or who are listening or who have concerns, there's also going to be a pushback from the courts that people are already sitting on the bench. How do we help protect those people who want to help work on this without getting blackballed in the court?
I personally don't worry about it.
Okay. Ricky?
Let me just say this, because you hear that a lot of times, but we must realize this: African Americans have already been blackballed on this court.
Okay.
So when you start thinking about I'm gonna get blackballed, they've already excluded us. So you can't think like that in this battle. You must know what the goal is. The goal is a diverse judiciary, especially when almost a third of this county, Anne Arundel County, I'm speaking of specifically, is non-Caucasian. So how in the world can you have an all-Caucasian court of just one person that is not representative of our percentage? That's taxation without representation, sir.
Is there any judges that's a sitting judge that feels this is unfair? Judge Barber?
Well, I have run into some judges that understood the controversy and everything that I went through. In fact, one judge who's now retired, she actually donated to my campaign, and she's a sitting judge. And but she understood the struggle. She knew the county, the demographics of the county, and she understood that this, was really, the cards were stacked against me. And then you also have judges like that are in private practice now, like Billy Murphy. He's a strong advocate. He's not a sitting judge, but he ran for judge decades ago, and he won in Baltimore City against the establishment. and he has testified just about every year in opposing this type of legislation that gets reintroduced every year after year after year after year. And he raises again strong arguments, compelling arguments, and he understands that once this is changed, once the open process is changed to a closed process, it's no turning back from that point. You know, it's a seriously major option to try to reverse course, you know, once this passes.
Plus, there are a bunch of judges on the bench already who got there by winning elections. So
it varies. You know, one of the things, for example, Doris mentioned that some Black judges ran in contested elections and they were sitting judges and they lost and they were booted off. Well, but see, the composition or the demographics change year after year after year. For example, Donna Hill Staton was appointed by, I believe, Governor Glendenning, and she was running in a contested judicial election and she was unsuccessful. But then Quincy Coleman, same county, same court, Howard County Circuit Court, blew it away, and African-American male judge, and got elected, not appointed, elected and unseated a sitting judge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
and that was absolutely terrific. I watched that race as closely as I could from Montgomery County. And I think one of the interesting things as well is what happened in Carroll County. The judge who ran in this contested race, I forgot his name, in Carroll County.
Carroll County was Laura Morton. She was the one that
yeah, well, she was the challenger, but who was the appointed judge? Because he was appointed before and he lost the election and he was reappointed. And he won this election, which is also something else. So even when the appointed judges lose the election, they still sometimes get reappointed again. And I think it's Charles County where Judge Stanilosis, ran as a challenger against the appointed judge, did not make it, and then he was appointed and he ran uncontested in this last race. So it's really interesting how these things happen, because when you have the power of appointment and the privilege and the entitlement that comes with that, you're in an extremely powerful position. I remember the last time that I saw you, Judge Barber, was in Annapolis, where they talked about how the Court of Special Appeals judges and the Court of Appeals judges, because they run for retainment and they don't run in contested races, they have 88% of the vote on average.
Right.
Nobody knows anything about them. And basically that's what they're asking for in the circuit court, where they're asking for the judges to just run for retainment without anybody knowing anything about them.
You raised a good point, because some of the confusion with voters, oftentimes when you go to the polls, they don't understand the fact that you have four choices to pick from for a circuit court judge, and why the appellate judges are just an up and down retain yes or no. They don't understand the distinction. They don't understand why the system exists that way. They don't understand how the circuit court judgeship is, and the ballot is made out differently than it is for the appellate judges. They don't understand that, and you have to educate.
Go ahead, Ricky.
And let me just say this as well. The statistics are as high for judges who have been appointed when they have to run an election. So in other words, once you've been appointed and you get an election, because of this myth that these people have been properly vetted and are the most qualified, because of that myth, a lot of the electorate will, so to speak, swallow that whole. So even those who've been appointed but must still run an election, they're extremely successful, probably 80+%. And so what we're dealing with here, because we have got to deal with those who are recommended to the governor being reflective of the percentage of the population. That's the only way we can be assured by having a law like that, because they just keep recommending Caucasians, even though they're objectively grossly less qualified. That's what we're dealing with, systemic racism.
With this in Maryland and in other states, has this similar law been passed in other states that you know of?
Well, what I do know from my home state of Louisiana, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, the judges, I have some judges' friends down there, and they were facing the exact same thing. And what they did was they got their legislators together and they pushed for a separate jurisdiction from which an electorate can select their own judge. So they had to do it that way. They had to actually get a separate electoral district that consisted of majority African Americans, and that's how they got African Americans on the bench. So they had to take an extreme approach. This is really entrenched, sir. We got a problem on our hands.
I just want to add a couple of more points. One is that when you're dealing with the judiciary and the fact that these people are chosen, they are part of, they don't want to say it, but they are part of the elite. It's an elite culture and it's a privileged culture. And those are the ones
they are extremely well connected as well.
And very well connected.
Really
so the people that are making it and are shortlisted, well connected, they are oftentimes elite, they're oftentimes white male, and they can, lobby each and every one of those Judicial Nominating Commission members with lunch, dinner, whatever they want to persuade them to vote in their favor.
And we've said that a couple of times, that they're often white males and they're often connected and entitled and things of that sort. And I want to make sure that people know that, those things in and of themselves are not necessarily bad things. I think our issue with them is the result that you then get. You then get a state like Maryland, who's supposed to be so progressive, who incarcerates a higher percentage of its young Black males than any other state in the country. You then get, to look at the ACLU reports, and you see how, in some places in Maryland, you are 8 times more likely to be convicted of a marijuana charge if you are African American than if you are not. You then get the juvenile statistics about the percentage of juveniles who get tried through the court system because the judges who are appointed are not able to identify with these kids, and they see these kids and they see they see criminals instead of
they're not able to identify.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the not able to identify.
Yeah, exactly. When they see somebody who looks like them, who's a young person, and that person commits what could be a delinquent act, they see it as youthful exuberance. When they see somebody who doesn't look like them, who commits the same delinquent act, this person is a delinquent, this person is a criminal, this person needs to go away. And these issues are just so complicated, and there's so many different legs to them. For instance, one of the things that feeds into, because it feeds into mass incarceration, and we then have to talk about prison labor. There's a bill in the legislature where Delegate Terry Hill is trying to get something passed so that people won't be making 17 cents an hour working in the prison. So it's not just the judges are separate from everything else. It's all encompassing, and it is so hard to talk about this topic in a short amount of time. There's just so much involved, and I see Dr. Hogg has her hands up, so I will.
Yeah, I have to go to another meeting in 15 minutes. I just wanted to go back to the same thing I said before, which is we need to educate the public by getting this group to write a good article about all these issues and find the right place to send it out on email so people get it before next week. That lays all this out, how racist it is, how discriminatory it is. Get Thomas Johnson involved. He's the one who told us Hogan has not nominated anyone but white men for this position of circuit court judge. This is outrageous.
But that's also intentional, though.
It's also intentional.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
he knows what he's doing.
He's racist, but the public doesn't know it. We have to inform the public. We need facts and figures about how to prove that it's racist.
Well, there is a website that some may or may not know about called the robingroom.com. And that's where you can grade and evaluate judges. Lawyers can do it, and so can litigants. What you will find, though, is that unfortunately, the federal judges who get lifetime appointments, most federal judges, not all, but most federal judges who get lifetime appointments because they're Article 3 judges, they have the worst ratings because they don't care. They have a lifetime job, and it's like, so what? So what, you don't like me? So what, you didn't like the way I ruled? So that's bothersome because I can't see justice being administered in that type of situation.
So wait, I'm just trying to be practical. Where are we who's gonna write the article and where is it gonna be sent to? Progressive Maryland could help, ACLU could help. Thomas Johnson might have some info.
Yeah, I think what I'm planning on doing is speaking to Alan Bowser, because he's the one who sent it to us. So I'm going to speak to him to see if he could speak to Hamza, or either Alan or Hamza could write an article, because I think that's a terrific idea to try to reach out to other people.
I do have an article coming out in the Anne Arundel County NAACP newsletter dealing with this, with this specific issue and focusing on voter suppression.
Can we also see if we could get it in the Montgomery County branch and NAACP branch newsletter as well?
Sure.
Because that would also be helpful. Oh, okay. And Mr. Jones has a question.
Yeah, the key would be, do you know the editors? Because I have the articles. It's not about the articles. It's about getting editors to publish it. If you know editors, that's who we need to know, who are willing to do it. If you need an article, I can get that to you yesterday. It's just a matter of finding editors who will publish it.
Dr. Hawk, do you want to respond to that?
I don't know any editors.
Well, the editor of the Arundel Patriot, which is another up-and-coming publication, they probably look favorable upon this type of education of the electorate.
Yeah, so we're going to send it, whatever we have as far and as wide as we possibly can. Yeah, somebody suggested to me privately, so I won't say that person's name unless that person wants me to, but the suggestion was to send it to the Women's Democratic Club of Montgomery County.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so but we could do that too. We've got the contact information for those people.
But I don't think they would do it because they only do partisan things. They're Democrats above all. This isn't partisan.
See, that's
the problem.
Misnomer as well, because isn't April's case a case that basically says that the judicial races are partisan races? Because they go back and forth, like the appointed judges, they go back and forth as to whether this position is partisan or non-partisan. But April at the
I tried to get them to have you as a speaker before the election, and they said no, only partisan.
But see, that's exactly what I mean. Because that's a smoke screen out there. That is, because
that's a smoke screen. And you know what happened in my county? When Reverend Ricky Nelson Jones and I were running for judge on the circuit court, the Republican Party excluded us and told us that they did not now. But see, they got this thing where they invited the 4 sitting judges who were Republican and appointed by Republican governor, but they chose not to include us. So we were excluded from that event. I remember it very well. And to the extent that it was brought up in the press, like, hey, wait a minute, you left people out. How did you have a forum and you didn't invite all the people that were on the ballot? I mean, it was just another intentional incident on their part.
I want to thank everyone for coming on You Be the Judge. We're back here next Wednesday, same bat channel. Any comments, please email us. Everyone who's been on this call has an email so we can get this organized and get the data. I know I said I'll be working with Ms. Green. And then so Ms. Marylin, you're probably getting a lot of emails, and then we'll disseminate it from there. Marylin, you want to say anything before we take off?
Well, I was wondering, I was looking at it, and Mr. Stanton had a suggestion as to what group he wanted to work on. I'm not sure if he wanted to maybe give us a 10-second answer. But okay, that's fine. Oh yes, I think that okay, Mr. Stanton.
Yeah, good evening, peace and love. I just
Love.
again thank you all for your leadership in this area. It is so critically important that we get what I'm hearing, from today's call after being on board last week as well, is the importance to really, in the midst of even this particular challenge, but the importance to really educate our electorate around this process in general. So while we are focused very much so on addressing this issue that is in front of us, we also need to be working to educate people at large so that this continues to, we itch away at people knowing and understanding the judicial process, how it's tied. And as I've been saying, racism does not just exist in police departments. It exists in every facet, in every industry, and including medicine. So we have to be very, very, very astute about educating our community. So as I said, I am willing to coordinate. We started to put together a list of bills that we believe should be supported that are now being pushed throughout a number of different statewide and regional organizations. And so, we've added this bill to it as well. Thank you.
And are you able to send us that list when it becomes public? Because it would be a good idea for us to have it so that way we could help you along with your cause. For those who don't know it, Mr. Stanton is with the, oh my gosh, Maryland Legislative Black Caucus Foundation. Did I get that right?
Yes, ma'am. That is
good. Thank you. Like, I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything. I want to make sure that okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate all your efforts, all your time, and all the energy that you devote to this topic. Thank you. You guys are great advocates for your positions, and we really look forward to seeing you in Annapolis next week.
And for those of you who are going to want this so you can share it with your people, you'll be able to catch the show on iHeart and Apple Tunes, and I'll send a link to Marylin. You guys can get it from there so you can share it with people so this way they can hear and discuss the discussion of what this is all about.
Dr. Hawk?
Dr. Hawk?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say, Judge Barber's article should be widely disseminated because she knows what she's talking about, and the whole county should hear about it, not just Anne Arundel. The whole state should hear about this. This is going to the Maryland General Assembly. So how can we publicize this article? This is somebody who's in the know and who's succeeded.
Well, I can certainly share with Marylin Pierre the article so that she can spread it, share it widespread all over. And I'll continue to share, Montgomery County NAACP, I'd be happy to share it with them too. Yeah,
and if I have it, how do they say it? I will wallpaper the walls with it. So as far and as wide as you want me to share it, I will definitely do that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.